Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. On this episode, I sit down with a colleague from back in my work on the brand side, Craig Baxter, Group President of Techt Industries Canada, Inc., part of a global $13 billion powerhouse tool house of brands that includes Milwaukee, Ryobi, and Hoover. In a wide-ranging and engaging conversation, Craig talks about radical innovation, retail go-to-market strategy, leadership for growth, and the epic come-from-behind marketplace win for his Milwaukee brand of power tools as the sixth horse in a five-horse race. Let's listen in now. Craig Baxter, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast, my friend. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, Mike. It's awesome to be here.
Well, you and I go back more years than almost we could count when we hadn't seen each other in, I want to say, decades. We were colleagues back in the Black & Decker days. So it's great to see you. I've been watching your career, and congratulations on all your success and your accomplishments.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel the same way about what you've been up to. I think it's you've found your calling. It sure seems to me, which I think is fantastic. Everybody needs to do that, and it looks like you have. So congratulations,
well,
6+ years, and I mean 1,000+ interviews and people from all around the world. And thanks for bringing me on. I'm not a Navy SEAL. I'm not a chancellor. I'm just a power tool guy. That's it's great to be on. Thanks for having me.
One of my most interesting memories is you walking down the hall at Black & Decker and saying, well, I just killed a brand. And that was back in the days when Black & Decker had an industrial tool line, and it was in the transition to DeWalt. So I remember you from that. But since then, what have you been doing? What do you do, and what do you do for a living today? Yeah,
that was an interesting time. I left Kraft General Foods in the early 90s. I started my career at I did a BSc in food science and MBA, and the food industry was a great place to start. And Kraft General Foods was an outstanding organization to develop my marketing acumen. But, I think that if, you need to have a lot of passion for the products that you sell and market. And, as much as I loved Baker's chocolate, I loved power tools a heck of a lot more.
I remember that about you. We've just been talking off mic. You're a big power user, literally, of these products, right? You like work with your hands.
I absolutely, at lunchtime, I'd be going to Home Depot to buy materials and other things to work on my basement at night and, learn how to do a lot of different things. So that's where my true passion is in the hardware space. So, as much as I loved, taking pictures of the chocolate chip muffins, that was not exactly, something
going home and talking about. What do you do? Yeah, God bless them. The people get, as you said, people get passionate about different things. Right?
Yeah, and for me it was tools. So I left Kraft and went to Black & Decker. People thought I'd lost my mind when I did that, but I felt like I won the lottery because I was finally working on something I loved a lot, and that was power tools. And not long into that adventure, we discontinued the Black & Decker industry and construction brand because DeWalt was really beginning to take off. Yep. It was amazing, that run in the 90s, and I started working on the DeWalt brand at Black & Decker and spent many years there on the sales and marketing side, and really enjoyed my time. The global president back then, Joe Galli, who launched DeWalt, I still work for him today, but that was really in the heyday of DeWalt. And
what's that? Wait a minute, what's that like? You've been working at one arm's length, or been in your universe, or reporting directly to the same individual for literally decades. I mean, you must know each other's habits and short form conversations. And what's that like?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, at 3 different companies. I mean, Black & Decker, first Newell Rubbermaid, and now TTI. So, we've seen each other in many, many different situations. And, I think it boils down to you tend to surround yourself with people that you're comfortable with, that know you well, understand you, understand expectations and the way that you handle situations. There's a familiarity to that. I've done the same thing. I've got people today that work for me who were with me when you and I were at Black & Decker, and they came with me to Newell and to TTI. So I've done it the same way, and Joe has surrounded himself with individuals that have known him for a while. And it's just worked out well, or we probably wouldn't still be together.
I guess so.
That's the reality of it.
That's so interesting. So what do you do? What do you do for a living now? So you went from Black & Decker, you went into different organizations, and I most associate you in my mind with a Milwaukee brand, but really you oversee a number, like a what do you call them, a house of brands, or talk about TTI and start at the global level and tell me about Canada after that.
Yeah, I mean, so we did spend some time at Newell, and then the phone call came to join Joe at TTI. And, people don't know what Tektronix Industries is all about, but you would certainly know our brands. I mean, the Milwaukee brand is really the flagship of the organization. We also have Ryobi. The Rigid brand, although owned by Emerson, we make those tools, and the AEG brand is sold outside of North America.
That's a European. I think that is a European and Asian brand.
Exactly.
Mostly,
yeah. Hoover and Dirt Devil on the floor care side, and then we have some smaller hardware brands like Stiletto, Empire as well in layout hand tools. So
how does the? I'm interested. I mean, I get. I'm sitting in your chair. You've got this portfolio of brands. You've got hardware, tools, you've got clients, and then you got Hoover. How does Hoover fit in? Was Hoover, in your mind, was that, or the organization's mind, was that opportunistic, same channels of distribution? How did a brand like Hoover
Well, our founder, Horst Pudwell, had the Dirt Devil brand in the portfolio. Hoover became available in 2007. We bought it from Maytag back then, and it was a great complement. It was a good and better scenario on the floor care side.
Sure.
So, very complementary, not the same space as tools, but it fit in well with a business that we were already in called floor care, right? So that's how we ended up, we got it for a steal. We paid $107 million for Hoover. Maytag paid $1.2 billion for Hoover. So, and Hoover's an iconic brand. I mean, it's like the Sawzall. It's like people refer to the reciprocating saw as the Sawzall, just like they talk about cleaning. As far as hoovering, iconic brand. So we picked that up as well. Globally, Mike, we're a $13.7 billion global organization, global manufacturer under those brands. We have a footprint that spans through North America. 75% of our volume is in North America, but we are also in Mexico, Central America, right through the UK, Europe, Asia. We've got a great business in Australia and New Zealand. And, we have been very methodical and thoughtful of how our global expansion, has taken place. It really is a global company now, and our reach will expand over the next several years.
And you go to market. Let's talk about how you go to market. You've got, when I talk to folks like yourself at brands, they have traditional, let's call them wholesale distribution relationships. Some have their own stores. Sometimes they're outlets. Sometimes they're brand stores. I was just in the Yeti brand store in Austin, Texas, and talk about an embodiment of the brand, right? I think they sell a lot. They got a bar. They got a stage. They got stools built on Yetis. So some have direct. Some are more purposeful about it, like a Levi's is saying, or Canada Goose, I want to hit 50% direct or whatever, and then the online piece. Which and how do you go to market amongst those three ways?
We are through distribution. We do not sell direct. In Europe, we do sell some floor care direct.
Okay.
But in North America, we have distributor partners. And, Home Depot, we have an amazing relationship with Depot. I mean, the Ryobi and
I see a lot of
Rigid
red on those
brands.
shelves. When you're walking in those stores, I see a lot of red.
You see a lot of TTI in there. And Milwaukee, our model is a little broader with Milwaukee, but Home Depot is our box store partner. So we don't sell other retailers. We sell some hardware distributors and certainly have a huge footprint on the industrial, electrical, plumbing side of it. But Depot is a big part of our revenue and our success. They're a wonderful...
pretty good retailer to attach your wagon to, I have to say.
Yeah.
You must be excited about... they've announced their strategy to open up dedicated contractor locations. And I think there's actually going to be one in Mississauga, like one here, a couple close by. You must be pretty excited about that.
Yeah, and they just made a significant acquisition in the States with an industrial distributor.
Yep. Out of Dallas, I think, Out of Dallas, but
big roofing, outdoor power. That was a very significant acquisition. Unfortunately, they don't have any locations in Canada, but the future may be different, right? But at the end of the day, our goal is to delight the end user and create demand, for our partners, and we've been very selective with who we have partnered with. We didn't want to saturate our model with retailers that didn't add value or, service a user that we want to go after from a product standpoint. So we've been very thoughtful with the partners that we've chosen. We definitely want to focus on building end user equity, building demand, and have our retail partners that we've chosen benefit greatly from that.
We're disproportionately. I was working on a strategy for a company, and they, like you, have a limited distribution footprint. And I the wonderful thing about that is having, you and I have put programs together for brands that are broadly distributed, and you put a program together and you've got to kind of match it for every single partner, right? Or else, it doesn't work. And so you I won't say water down, but you have to be a little less ambitious because you got to do it 5 or 7 times versus 2 or 3. So there's just an inherent advantage to that focused distribution strategy.
There absolutely is. And, we have the least abrasive distribution model in the history of the hardware space because we don't have the Milwaukee brand, say, on the front page of, 6 different retailers.
Right.
And then we have, we don't have customers.
They must
going
knock on your door, though. They must be knocking on your door.
They would love to get a hold of the Milwaukee brand. There's no question about that, as well as the Ryobi brand, which is exclusively at Depot. And, that's the best DIY platform in the world, just like Milwaukee is now the global leader in cordless. So when you have that kind of user equity, the phone rings often, let's just say that, to get a hold of it.
But that didn't come overnight, right? I mean, I want to talk about how you allocate, how you think about allocating resources, both human and time, and how the corporation does. But tell me about the rise. I want to focus on Milwaukee a little bit. The rise of Milwaukee, because you and I were talking about it off mic. Who would imagine a day where kind of a niche brand, when you and I were working together, becomes such a powerhouse? Like, how did, kind of a simple question, but how did such a thing happen? I mean, it's not expenditure of massive amounts of dollars. There had to be more to it than that, right?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting story. I mean, back in 2007 in Canada, and it was certainly the case in other parts of the world. I mean, we were 6th in a 5-horse race. We were that far behind. Yeah. We were the definition of irrelevant at that point in time. But we had this great thing called the Milwaukee brand. It's been around now. In fact, this year's our 100th anniversary of the brand. So we had a great brand to start with. And I'll tell you, Mike, one of the most interesting facts in the transition in market share from other brands to Milwaukee is that in 2007, 98% of the market was nickel cadmium. It wasn't lithium ion. And we had absolutely no end users to upset when we went all in on lithium ion.
And and just for the listeners who may not know, you're talking about battery technology and different types of power and charge time. So that's what you're talking about more broadly is an installed base versus fresh going to market. But just to make sure the listeners kind of track with us. Yeah,
absolutely. So the chemistry of the battery, right? Yeah. So, lithium was the future, and we had no user base to convert. So we went all in on lithium. And so by the time our competitors realized lithium was the future, we were on a 3rd generation. We had 100+ tools in the lithium platform. And when you give your user an opportunity to make a decision around, a new platform, that's a little scary.
Coming from the guy who launched Versapack, but Black & Decker, I can attest to that.
There you go, right? I mean, you have the innovator's dilemma, right? You've built up a market share that's and you're minting money, but the future is not nickel cadmium. Right. So we got going in lithium ion, and that we had a demonstrable benefit for the user. And we launched with 12 volt first.
More power, longer runtime.
Yeah, absolutely.
Faster to charge.
Just
not to get into the nuts and bolts of it, but
I mean, you could just do more with less with lithium ion. The fact is, you get more performance out of the same size battery.
Right.
That's really what it amounts to. We really got going with 12 volt. We generated some interest in that platform. And when a 12 volt lithium drill performs as well as an 18 volt NiCad drill, you get some attention. And then all of a sudden, it's if that stuff's so good, what about 18 volt? That looks interesting. And that's how it began. And we seeded the market with a lot of batteries. We spent a lot of time with the user demonstrating the benefit of lithium ion. And in the 18 volt platform, you can imagine how demonstrably better that product performed.
Yeah.
So we got a lot of interest. And it started with a brand, and it started with a lithium ion cordless platform and people. I was able to bring on a lot of superstars that had worked for me at Black & Decker and Newell, and we really got started.
How many people work for TTI today? We're in a beautiful office here in Markham.
Well, we've got about 800 people all in.
Wow.
Started probably with fewer than 30, and today there's 800.
It's a nice
or so,
neighborhood. It's an interesting place. The only thing you need more of around here is speed bumps. You need more speed bumps, by the way, in and around the office building.
Yeah, I know. Mike's being wildly facetious. You can't drive 10 feet without a speed bump here. So, but yeah, it's a different
800 people now. I'm kind of fixated on that a little bit. Is that there's people out in the field. There's people doing product development. Like, what are those 800 people?
Yeah, so it's finance, HR, those are smaller functions, but then there's product service where people get product fixed, customer service, those that are taking orders and placing orders and demand planning, making sure that we've got product on the shelf. Right. And then a lot of sales and marketing people. We've got tremendous customer relationships, but we have a disproportionate amount of resources aligned against the user, creating awareness, trial, converting competitive products to red, green, whatever.
I knew I was close to your office. I couldn't because I saw the amount of red trucks in the parking lot. So that go-to-market strategy, that's people intense, right?
It is, and you won't see the Milwaukee brand on a rink board or at a baseball stadium. I mean, ours is a very, very targeted end user strategy. We build equity directly with the user. Our user needs to prove to themselves that the product performs. It does what we tell them it does. I mean, I've never met a manufacturer that lost their own demo. So at the end of the day,
right. You brought up Clayton Christensen in the Innovator's Dilemma. I mean, the essence is, there's a lot of tools or products that are made to last or not last. So you've got to come up with something demonstrably better to get someone to put aside a working product and take your product. And this is what you're talking about, that installed base, right? That magic of triggering that and then getting that geometric growth. I get it.
Yes, and that's a big challenge, Mike, when you go to replace other sources of power. No, our vision is a cordless job site. So we want to replace cords and gas and petrol and hydraulics and hand tools with a lithium-ion battery solution brought to you by, let's say, Milwaukee, whether it's MX, 12-volt, 18-volt. And, when you are convincing a user, like our MX platform replaces fuel, petrol in an application today, it takes a lot of work to convince that user that, in fact, you have a better solution than one that they've been using for a long time.
And it's probably not the first time somebody's knocked on their door and told them the same story.
Right.
I mean, hey, guess, over the years, it's like this, and it falls short. But a question for you around your product innovation at a broad level. What amount of your product innovation is focused on replacing existing product with batteries that are gas-powered or corded versus I've just got I've seen some of the products that are just so interestingly and amazingly innovative. Do you have a sense of the percentage of that? We're going to win with this tool because we're solving a problem that nobody else is solving versus we're solving the big problem, which was we're going to make for a gasless, powerless work site. What's the blend there?
Yeah, it's a real blend of, you certainly want to obsolete yourself with core products, whether it's drill drivers or impact drivers or, more traditional, a Sawzall, circ saw. You want to continue to obsolete yourself and come out with the next generation before anybody else does and innovate with that core product. But at the end of the day, it's new-to-world solutions, disruptive innovation that drives growth. 90% of our growth over the last several years has come from new products. And that is the real driver of our success, is listening to the user and understanding what they're looking for to make their lives more productive, safer, ergonomically more effective, whatever that may be, better value. We don't tell the user what they need. The user tells us what they need. And that's why we've had such an incredible track record of success with new products. And it's no accident, because by the time we bring that product to market, we've gone through so much user engagement and so many iterations of that product. It's half sold before we've launched it.
Pull on a thread about that. I mean, it's sometimes said, probably too often, that if you asked people who were, horseless carriage what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right? Do people always, I think in some applications, how do you open their minds to the world of possible that I could solve that with a tool, something that you've been doing very differently. Is that a part of your, it's kind of getting to my overall question about the three kind of keys to product innovation, right? Obviously deep understanding of the end user, but sometimes the end user doesn't know the innovation that is there a blend there? So talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the product managers in the U.S. and Europe and elsewhere, the product managers are very good at presenting the what ifs to a user and having them think differently about how they could accomplish the same task. Like they talk about pain points and, what is it that frustrates you about how you do your job today? So when you understand a frustration, if you're a great product manager,
you're listening.
You're listening and you're understanding how could I solve that for the user? The user might not understand how to solve it, but as a shrewd product manager, you come up with a way that accomplishes that for the user, and then you bring an iteration of that to the user. Ask them, what does this do for you that your current solution doesn't? And we might not get it right. We might go back to them 9 times before we get it right, but we get it right. And so as that process evolves, the user then begins to buy into the way in which we're trying to achieve that. And that's why we've had...
Do you have unpack that a little bit for me. Do you have a user panel? How do you engage with these people on a practical day-to-day basis? You walk into a job site and show some ideas. Do you have focus groups? Like, do you do that kind of back to your packaged goods background? Yeah,
there's certain users, mechanical contractors, big commercial plumbers, and others that we have relationships with, and these companies have hundreds and hundreds of users in their base of contracting help, and we visit them on a very regular basis. And
so they help articulate the super end, like they're a super end user versus an end user. So they kind of gather things that people are looking for and translate that for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we have relationships with users that we can go to on a regular basis. Ask them what they're looking for. And, that base is expanding all the time because we're getting into new verticals. We're getting into new spaces, And that's a lot of people wonder, how can you continue to grow at the same rate that we have, which is, significant. And at the end of the day, we will develop products for a current vertical, which would be a plumbing, plumber, electrician, HVAC, mechanical user. Yeah. But then there's also new verticals, we call them, like power and utility, for example, where we've brought new-to-world solutions to people that, install hydro lines and, do all kinds of work on the grid. Unique solution, crimpers and cutters and things like that.
I was looking at unbelievable. I got lost down a rabbit hole on your site. I was down looking at these power tools, and I'm like, and there's, I can't remember which it was. It was you put it near a space and you run away from it and activate it remotely, and it does some stuff. I'm like, oh my goodness, like what a variety. It's interesting. I want to talk about growth for a few seconds, then I want to get back to leadership. I want to spend the last time we have together on leadership. But growth typically can come by an increase of distribution, expansion of the product line. Sometimes it comes by getting into new markets and different things. How do you guys balance that? You sit at the table with Joe and the fellow country leaders, I'm sure, and you kind of talk about these big issues. If we want to be this company, what are the ways that we're going to get there? How do you what's the formula for that? How do you guys together, men and women, sit and think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike. We have a global meeting every year where we have leaders in from every market that we play in, and we certainly understand the priorities in every one of those markets. So we develop 12, 24, 36-month product roads that consider all the opportunities that we have globally. And the opportunities, you could probably boil them down into a few buckets. I mean, one would be, those core verticals and what's the next generation of products that, that's a big part of the business is the core, But then
you're going to get some organic, in Canada, for example, probably the U.S., we talked about needing 3 to 4 more million houses alone. So you've got some organic growth that's going to drive some of that demand.
Absolutely. There's economic drivers, but then there's also, the bigger part of it is the new to world solutions and replacing sources of energy and other ways that users perform their tasks today with a lithium-ion solution, for example. Could be a hand tool as well that's more innovative. Sure. But, so there's new verticals as well, like I just described in hydro or power and utility, I should say. So, and then they're like outdoor power equipment. It's not long before the legislation will dictate you can no longer use petrol when it comes to trimming and cutting and lawn care and
you got a strong line in the Ryobi. I'm just looking in your office here. You got a cordless mowers, and you got a lot of great cordless product.
Absolutely, we were on the vanguard of the whole transition from petrol to lithium ion as a solution for any kind of lawn maintenance and landscaping and all of that. So, and then there's also looking at markets, right? I mean, if we want to go into a new market, we will also look at what's required to gain traction and credibility quickly within a new market. South America is not like North America. It's not like Europe. It's not like Asia. So what do we need in those markets in order to quickly establish ourselves? And then, without those core products, you won't have the credibility that will lead you to having success with the broader lines. There's many different ways. Not all opportunities are created equal. Some have a bigger short-term volume, some have a longer or a bigger longer-term volume, but you got to, you got to invest up front in order to, establish yourself.
Probably some kind of matrix, right? I mean, the amount of investment it's going to take and the size of the prize, basically, on a kind of a matrix.
And as you scale up, and obviously as a business scales up, you have more funds available to invest in other places that have a future revenue stream, right?
Time, treasure, and talent, right? I mean, talent, going into new markets, I think the most underappreciated element is the talent to do it, right? To go to that market, whether it's you or someone else. So that's a segue for me into talk about your leadership style. I mean, you were asking me how I got interested in reconnecting. Amongst other things, it was you were posting about leadership. I just saw you did a big event, President's Award, and so you're very focused on leadership. What are the kind of leadership guidelines or principles that you have that have guided your success and that help you guide the team?
Well, leadership is really 99% of what I think about today. I mean, my role today is very different than it was 15 years ago when we had 2% market share.
Right.
I have learned over the years that there is only one resource where the sum can be greater than the parts, and that's with human capital, human resource. And I'm interested in making 2 + 2 = 5 and 6. That's the kind of math that we like around here. And it's people that are the only ones that are able to do that. And I look at my role as being one where I just create an environment where talented people can flourish. And I have found that when I do that and, have people realize more and more of their potential, great things are possible. I think leadership skills are more important than any other skill. It's just that simple.
Yeah, and it's kind of evolved, though. I just gave you a copy of Leader's Leap, Steve's book, and one of the points he makes in his evolution as thinking about leadership was, and this perhaps applies kind of when we were younger and managed, you kind of expected or you expect of yourself to have all the answers. Leadership meant having the answers, and his evolution, he talks some about in the book, is you kind of that higher evolution where you realize that you're cutting the company and yourself short by expecting you to have all the answers, like you're so omnipotent. Do you agree with that? And is that part of your philosophy as well?
Yeah, I think as the leader, you don't need to be the smartest person in the room. And I think if you act like you're the smartest person in the room, you're not going to get the best out of that room. I think as the leader, you should talk last. I think you should, if you surround yourself with talented individuals that know what to do and are great at what they do, the smartest thing you can do is just sit and listen and go around and solicit as much feedback and information. What's the downside of that? And if the leader is the one who speaks first, you taint the view of those around the table.
Right.
You don't get the most robust and thorough point of view, I guess, in terms of what, the input you need to make a decision. So I think you should talk last. I think you should become an exceptional listener. And I think when people know they have a voice, you respect their voice and are interested in what, who knows more about a role than the person in the role. When you ask people what they think, when you ask people what do you think we should do, it's unbelievable what they come up with. And if you give them that opportunity, they tend to think differently. They tend to think at a higher level.
Yeah.
And when you express respect for their opinion and you solicit their opinion, I think it's just one of the smartest things that you can do as a leader. I mean, I think you will always arrive at a better decision a more well thought through decision when you're soliciting the feedback. Great leaders surround themselves with people that are smarter than that are terrific at what they do. Why on earth would you not take advantage of that fact? Yeah, I completely agree with that. Talk last and listen, and you'll be better off.
That's great. Last question for you. So if someone was aspiring to a leadership role such as yours, and perhaps some of the listeners are maybe a bit younger and kind of aspire to leadership, what I don't want to say the secret sauce, because that's kind of like not a correct question. There's no secret to it. But what are your kind of tips for the listeners around becoming a leader in an organization?
Well, it's a journey. That's there's no perfect leader. Leaders they come from a lot of different styles of work, in terms of leadership. And, the style depends on the situation as well, But a couple of things, that I think that individuals should do more of would be, the first one, Mike, would be to set higher expectations. I think people set expectations that are far too low. And when you set an audacious goal, it sets people up to think differently, act differently, ask for different things. Great people want to be pushed. They want a lot expected of them. They have a lot to give. There's a lot of potential. But if you set the bar very low, you're not going to achieve what was possible. Set audacious goals, personally and professionally. You will be far better off in the long term by doing that. The second thing is that you need to learn how to inspire. Nobody says, on the way to work, boy, I can't wait to get to the office today so that I can be managed. They don't want that. Yeah, they don't want to be controlled. They don't want to be managed. They want to be inspired. And you need to figure out as a leader, just because you're in a position requiring leadership, it doesn't mean you know how to lead. It just means you're in that position.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to lead. And that's not doing someone's job for them. It's none of that. It's inspiring them to achieve greatness. And you need to learn how to inspire people. That's another 4-hour conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
But, the business world needs more inspiring leadership.
Is there anything you observe amongst fellow leaders that you would say, maybe you should do less of that? I was going to ask the question, 2 starts and 1 stop. This is kind of the stop. In other words, I see some leaders doing this. Maybe it worked before. Maybe it's just never worked. But is there anything that jumps out at you?
Yeah, I would say less cheerleading.
Oh, okay.
Less cheerleading. I think that if you understand what great looks like and you expect, great people to do great things, if that's not what happened, you need to be prepared to have tough conversations, honest conversations with people that help them get better. If you don't provide candid, constructive feedback to people, they don't know how to get better. You will also lull them into thinking the way they're doing things is perfectly acceptable when they were capable of better. And I think as a leader, you lose credibility. Because if those around know the job wasn't done at the level that it should have been done at, you don't look great as the leader. So I call that cheerleading versus leading. That's just weak leadership, And I would say tied to that, another thing, Mike, is that tolerating poor performers. I think there's a lot of that goes on, and you will never build great with poor performers. I think you want to spend your time with eagles and deal with turkeys. That's as simple as that, right? I mean, a great.
Do you there was the school of GE thought, which kind of got distorted in popular culture of call the 10% every year, which even Jack Walsh says, no, you don't get it. I was focusing on the 90%, not the 10, but things got focused on the 10. Do you have a similar kind of thing, or do you go person by person and case by case?
It's not that black and white. I mean, Jack did a lot of things really well, and it worked at that time, but things changed.
Or not, because, it didn't go so well after he left.
Well, he made one bad decision that ended up hurting him in a big way. But I think that it's really case by case, Mike. There's no way that we're going to say that we got to deal with 10% of the organization every year. That's not real. I mean, you deal with people on an individual basis. We bring people in off campuses, put them in the Home Depot stores as an entry level role. We tend to fix are issues right there and then at the entry level. You know, by the time they're 3 promotions in, they've been vetted. And that's what I love about our model, is we're not bringing people in from other organizations into mid and high level roles in the organization. We're a homegrown team here, and I love it because we learn early on whether somebody has it or they don't. It doesn't make them a bad person.
Yeah, just maybe it's not for them.
That's exactly right. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you a bad fit for what we're trying to achieve. Well, so that's, I like that. Yeah, and so, I think tolerating poor performers, nothing great has ever been built by, tolerating that. So, that's the other thing I think is a big part of achieving success over the long term, not short term, long term. By long term, I mean 20 years.
That's a great conversation. If folks want to follow you, are you on social media? Are you a LinkedIn guy? Where can they get in touch and keep in touch and follow what you have to say?
Well, I'm never going to lead the league in social media exposure, but LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn.
Yep.
You can find me there. I email craig.baxter@ttigroupna.com. Those are probably the 2 places that you would be able to find me.
And for the brands, they've all got their websites. They're on the social media stuff. Probably all the usual cast of characters, right? You guys are pretty active on social media, probably?
Yeah, we are. We've got a tremendous following for all the brands. All you have to do is walk into Home Depot and you'll find us there. We've got a heck of a footprint in those stores. So, we're all over the place from a product standpoint.
Fantastic. Well, listen, congratulations on your success, personal success, professional success, and the success of the brands. It's been something to watch from my perspective, knowing a little bit about, spending a little bit of time in the channel. So thanks for joining me on the Voice of Retail podcast. Real treat.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the opportunity. And thanks for everyone for listening.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.